All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hard Nine podcast. It's May 30th, and today, for the first time since like the first week of the season, we're talking about a 500 Cardinal team and also a second place Cardinal team as the Cubs just lost 3-4 to the Milwaukee Brewers. Josh, obviously you can follow Josh. We have all of his stuff in the bio. He's on the Deal in the Cards podcast. He writes for Redbird Rants. And also go follow him at Twitter. It's Josh Jaco MLB, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So go follow him. You probably already do, but if you don't, go do it. Josh, I want to get your state of the union here. We're a third of the way through the season officially.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the first third of this 2024 Cardinals team?
It's as much of a roller coaster as I thought last year was at this time. It's been even more so this year. I think last year I kind of held out until middle of June, late June, and I was like, okay, I finally have to give up. They're finally going to have a losing season. This is weird. And then like 2 weeks ago, I wrote the team off. I thought they're dead. I was like, major changes are probably coming. Goldschmidt's definitely gonna be traded. Arenado will be traded in the offseason. This team's gonna look totally different in 2025. And now I'm fully bought back in on them as a playoff team. I really think they can compete for the NL Central title. I'm not a huge believer in the Brewers still yet. I think the NL Central will be up and down all year. The wild card standings are incredibly weak this year. The bar to get into the playoffs is probably as low as it's ever been. And I think this team has the recipe to get in and I don't know if they can really do anything in October, but my expectations for this team this year were that they'd be a playoff team, not a World Series contender. And so they're looking like the team I thought they're going to be. A strong offense, which I think has room to improve even more, a really, really good bullpen, and then a quality enough rotation to get you to the deadline. Hopefully, you add another established arm from there and you make a September or October, September or August, September run like they've done the last every year except for 2023 in my recent memory. So, team looks good. Is there things that we should be concerned about? Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about those, but I think this is different than last May when they kind of fooled us with an 11-3 run, beat some good teams, and it all fell apart again. That didn't really seem sustainable, even though in the moment I bought back in. This feels like a different team. What about you?
It feels a lot different to me, and that was the first thing I wanted to get into. Was I
Yeah.
keep seeing people say, "Well, this happened last May." Yes, it did, but the multiple things. One, they were like still 7 games below 500 at the end of that run last year.
Yeah.
They're at 500, so that's automatically way different.
Yeah.
But also, like they're doing it in a different way. Yeah, they're hitting, and that is was the key last year as well. But the starting rotation's been awesome, like
Yeah.
genuinely really good. Like in this stretch where they're 13-2 in the last 15 games, they had one really bad start, and it was Matthew Liberatore, who I don't think any of us expect to be in their rotation moving forward.
No.
So, like,
Yeah.
I think they're
Go ahead.
doing it in a way that's I don't know if Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson's sustainable, but I'm not going to say that they're not. Like, I'm not going to say they're going to be bad. I don't believe that either.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And if you even look back at the numbers from last May, so I did this into an article before the season started because I was like, okay, May was the really only month of the year last year they were really successful. So like, what contributed to that? And I looked below the hood a little bit, and I was like, or beneath the hood, and I was like, the numbers are really bad. In May last year, they had a 1.89 ERA from Miles Michaelis, 3.6 ERA from Liberatore in two starts, but then Wayno and Jordan Montgomery both had ERAs over 6. Jack Flaherty, Steven Matz were awful. They had ERAs above 5. The bullpen was really kind of hit or miss. And then the lineup was basically just carried by Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and Nolan Gorman that month. So like they had 3 elite middle of the order bats producing, which Nolan Gorman went God mode in May. And then you had a really good starts from Miles Michaelis, but honestly, they were like, if we think they're slugging to win games now, they were winning games by literally outslugging the other team because their starting pitching just couldn't handle it. And then their bullpen was still blowing games. I know the bullpen's been shakier lately, and part of that seems to be that they've been overusing the guys a lot. But like you said, even if there's some regression to come from Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, I don't see either of those guys being 5, 6 ERA guys the rest of the year. Kyle Gibson's given you 6, 7 innings in almost every start this year and has been really quality. Like he's more like a number 3 starter than the number 5 I thought he was going to be. Miles Michaelis, I don't believe in at all. So anytime you get anything good from him, I'm like, great, that's gravy. Palante obviously was great yesterday, so you don't really expect him to be 6 inning shutout ball every time. But
Hey,
even
he
if he gives you five with,
could.
yeah, who knows? But like even if it's 5 with 3 earned runs, like that's
Yeah, right.
playable. Especially with this bullpen, like I feel like it's sneaky deep now. We can talk more about that too at some point. It just feels totally different. And then they're also this offense is producing with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt still not producing. And I don't know if they're going to turn it around, but I also just don't think either guy's gonna be sub 700 OPS guy the whole year. That feels weird to me. And again, only until the last few weeks, Nootbaar, Gorman, Donovan, none of those bats were really hitting either. So the fact that they were able to kind of survive for so long and not fall 15 games below 500, now they're back at 500 already and still have guys that kind of need to get things going. It is a totally different team. And I loved your point too, that like they've gotten to 500 now, because part of the reason so many people wrote them off and it was really hard to believe is that they dug themselves such a hole that even if they can turn it around, it kind of was impossible to really get back into it, barring like an Atlanta Braves turnaround from the year they won the World Series, where they just like went God mode the rest of the year, or the Washington Nationals in 2019, where they were awful and then the best team in baseball the rest of the way. That wasn't in the cards for that Cardinal team. This Cardinal team doesn't need to be the best team in baseball the rest of the way. They just need to be a little bit above 500, and that's probably good enough for the third wild card, if not even the division. So again, totally different team. I'm bought in. But yeah, there's a lot of flaws we could talk about still, though.
The interesting thing as well, like this team just had to go on an incredible run to get back to 500. We can acknowledge that, which
Yeah.
is not ideal to have to do that. But if they go on another one of those runs, let's just say for the next month they're 500-ish.
Yeah.
And then in July they go on another run similar to this. You look up and they're 10 games above 500.
Yeah.
Like that's how quickly it can turn. And I do think a lot of people forget because of how well 2021 and 2022 ended with Albert Pujols and then the 17-game winning streak in
Yeah.
2021. These teams were 500 at the deadline.
Yeah.
Both. Like, and I was looking through the standings, and this shocked me. The Cardinals now are the closest team, second place team in the National League to their first place team. The Giants are 6.5 behind the
Wow.
Dodgers.
Wow.
The Atlanta Braves are 6 behind the Phillies, and the Cardinals are 5 behind the Milwaukee Brewers. So
Wow.
the Brewers, if they want to start losing games again, which they don't seem to like to do these days, but if they start losing games like they should, like they're not going to be, I don't think they're going to be a juggernaut all year long. I don't think
No.
they're going to win 95 or whatever games they're on pace to win. So they're going to be in the mix. And the thing that I really like about this team right now is we're seeing, like, we're talking about their offense, and guys are underperforming, a lot of them,
Yeah.
especially when you look at their season long numbers. They have 9 guys, including Contreras, who's obviously hurt right now, that are at 95 WRC plus or above, including Arenado and Goldie. That's
Yeah.
better than like almost any team in baseball. So
Yeah.
we look at their OPSs and they're bad. Like 700 OPS is not a great OPS for anyone in baseball. However, offense is way down this year across
Yep.
the board. So you're looking at a guy that last year, Gorman's at like I think he's at a 760 something OPS right now. Last year, that's probably around a 110, 105. He's at like a 118 OPS plus right now. So these guys are hitting better than most of the league right now. And I think it's what we should have expected is that they were going to turn it around. But when they were so bad for so long, it's hard to say, well, they're going to turn it around every
Yeah.
week. And they finally did. And
Yeah.
this is kind of what we expected. The one conversation I want to get into, because I'm not going to focus as much on the games specifically.
Yeah.
A lot of really good stuff happened, a lot of clutch hitting. The Cubs series was incredibly exciting, I thought. Um, I wanted to focus on Mason Wynn and Nolan Gorman for a second,
Mm.
because I think those two, you're looking at maybe the most exciting middle infield in baseball, young middle infield in baseball, besides
Yeah.
De La Cruz and Matt McClain when he's healthy, probably. But besides the Reds, like I think they have the most exciting young middle infield in baseball. Not only offensively, defensively, they've both been great this year.
Yeah.
I want to. What are your thoughts on what you're seeing from those two, as they're both on heater right now?
Yeah, I love actually. I'm gonna start the defense part first, and I think that's part of the reason this pitching staff is working a lot better than it did last year too. Is they're getting above average defense probably from second base, I'd say, from Nolan Gorman, and especially in the double plays, like him and Wynn with their arm strength, they really find a way to pull those off really well. And obviously, Mason Wynn makes some really weird errors sometimes, and this is not a good comparison, but it kind of reminds me of like when Javi Baez was first coming up, and you would see all these highlight reel plays, and then like the weirdest dumb plays sometimes. Like, what is happening? He's not like Javi Baez. I think he's better than that, but he'll grow out of it. And honestly, it cost them in one game, really, but for the most part, it's been fine. But the fact that this pitching staff now, like you can bring in a John King, you can bring in an Andre Palante, you can bring in these ground ball specialists, Miles Michaelis, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, and Michael Ciani, Mason Wynn, Nolan Gorman are making plays behind them. That's huge for this team. And then on the offense, like, I mean, most of us were expecting Mason Wynn to hopefully be a league average hitter this year. And if he's like a 98 WRC plus OPS plus guy, that's like, okay, like his defense will play, his speed will play, it'll be fine. And instead, his bat has really come around to the point where he is a line drive machine. I think at some point, not in the near future, but maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, he's going to grow into some power and maybe not be a 30 home run guy, but would it
No, he
surprise me at
won't
all
be.
if he's Yeah, but like a 20 home run guy at some point, I think he's got that in his profile, especially if he's
Possible.
getting at the top of the lineup and getting more at bats. But he hits the ball really hard. And then, but like also he doesn't strike out. I think he has like less than 30 strikeouts on the year right now, something crazy where he's just not striking out at all. He is a quality hitter, and that's something we've seen with Mason Wynn at every single level that he's been promoted to. He's besides spring training where he had that hot start. And so it's like, oh, you think he's MLB ready, but he went to AAA. It was really slow. The same thing happened when he's promoted to AA, high A. He's always had these slow starts where he kind of figures out the level. Last year, again, we saw him in September. It was really bad. People, even I kind of was like, oh, maybe we overrated Mason Wynn a little bit. This is interesting. And then he comes out and he's just awesome. So for me, Mason Wynn has become a guy where I think he can be a legit star in this league. Now, when you say superstar shortstops these days, like the bar for shortstop has significantly been raised when you have a Gunnar Henderson and a Bobby Witt Jr., like all these type of guys. But is Mason Wynn like a top 10 shortstop in baseball right now? I mean, he's playing like it.
This season for
And
sure, yeah.
yeah, and so I'm really high on him. I like the energy he brings to this team, the confidence he has too. He's just a guy that's a gamer and he's going to go out there and make the right plays. He does the little things. He helps you in the ways that you don't necessarily see it in the box score, but those double plays matter. His range matters. The fear that he has on the with his arm matters. On the base pass matters. I just think he's a legit guy. And then, like you said, Nolan Gorman's bat waking up. The Cardinals really don't have a big power guy outside of him right now. Nolan Arenado's power is zapped. Paul Goldschmidt's power is zapped. Hopefully they're coming back a little bit, but they really need a guy like Gorman that even if he's a 240, 230, 250 average guy, can hit 30 plus bombs and really destroy the baseball. And you just kind of have to live with the slumps from him. You got to live with the lows, but man, when the highs are there, they're awesome. So I don't know. Long term, if you're a contender, you probably want him more as your 6-hole hitter than your 3-hole hitter because it's just hard to rely on Nolan Gorman day in and day out. But man, when he's on, it's like Kyle Schwarber esque, where you want to put that lightning in a bottle and let it go for a while. And so I think they like you can make a strong argument. I wouldn't disagree at all that those two guys could be the key to this offense to success the rest of the way through. Now, obviously, I mean, when Wilson Contreras comes back, he's their best bat, and Lars Nootbaar has the ability to change his lineup. I mean, he's shown that before his injury again, but like he catches fire whenever he kind of gets in line for a little bit. Obviously, we know what Arenado and Goldschmidt can do when they're healthy, but right now, Wynn and Gorman are the guys carrying this offense. I don't know what your thoughts are on them, but that's kind of where I'm at with them.
The thing that I really like about Wynn and Gorman is it feels sustainable, especially for Wynn. Like
Mm,
you look at Wynn's sweet spot percentage and his launch angle, like he passed Mookie Betts for the highest line drive rate in baseball over the weekend, or not over the weekend, over the week, the last series against the Reds. Like that's a sustainable way to play. He doesn't seem like none of it seems inconsistent. Like he's gonna fall off the wheel here soon. Like we we saw him for a little bit. He went through a little bit of a slump for like about 2 weeks where he cooled off.
yeah.
Then he got right back to it, and he's been the most consistent hitter on the team outside of Contreras, who's obviously hurt now. So I think
Yeah.
he's consistent. And then for Gorman, like earlier this year, I was getting really frustrated because you can take the 30 to 35% strikeout rate if he's hitting homers. Like you don't love it.
Yeah.
No one loves it. But if he's hitting homers, then whatever. Like I don't care if he strikes out twice and hits a homer in the game. He provided you a lot of value in that game. However,
Yep.
if you're not hitting the homers, then the strikeouts aren't as palatable. But he's hitting the homers again. Like he's hit two
Yeah.
homers off lefties this weekend. I mean, this week against the Reds, two big homers, two insurance runs.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm excited about both those two. I think they're going to be around for a long time. Like honestly, those are two guys from the Cardinals I'm talking about extensions with this offseason to see if I can lock them up as a part of my core moving forward. Um, because I don't think Donovan or Nootbaar make much sense to extend right now, just because they're older. I don't know how much they're going to get in the free agent market. Those two are really young. I would look at them maybe being your key to the future. But that one thing you mentioned the bullpen earlier, and I do want to talk about that. I don't want to get into too many negatives. They're playing really good baseball right now. But the bullpen is alarming, and I think we all kind of saw this coming. One, because
Mm,
all three of those guys with Kittredge, JoJo, and Helsley were unsustainably great for the first 6 weeks of the season. Like they were all fantastic, but also because they were being used a ton. And when you're being used that
yeah,
often, it's just like you're bound to break at some point. Not necessarily break, but just falter. You're gonna get tired.
for
There,
sure.
Keenan Middleton's probably out for the year. Okay, we're just gonna say that. Like, seems like he's going for UCL surgery. A guy just had a massive problem in New York who's been a high leverage reliever, and I think is going to he's got DFA'd. If I'm the Cardinals, why would you not? Why would you not go get Jorge Lopez? Just tell him not to throw his glove in the stand. Figure out what's going on with him. I heard he has some family issues going on. Figure that out. Get him on
Okay.
a winning environment, which they Cardinals kind of are right now. Go get him. Like that's a high leverage reliever that falls into your lap. That never happens at this time of the year. What do you think? What do you think about Jorge Lopez? I just sprung that on you, but I genuinely think like he was a sub 3 ERA before that blow up outing yesterday. Like he's a really good reliever, and they without Keenan Middleton, they need another high leverage option because I don't trust Gallegos to be that guy when he comes back.
Yeah, and to your point too, like I don't know if you necessarily made this point, but it's part of the DFA process too. It's not going to cost you a lot to go after him. I'm sure they're going to have to well, maybe not. I mean, if they can claim
Probably
him,
have to
that'd be
trade, I
great. But
would
if you have to
guess.
trade for him, I mean, it's probably not going to cost you much there.
No.
And you can never have enough pitching. You can never have enough bullpen depth. I mean, it's like, thank the Lord that they went out and got Kittredge and Middleton to add to JoJo and Helsley this year. Because Cardinals' move kind of would have been to go get one guy. And then if it was Middleton, then they would have been basically Helsley and JoJo this year. And it's like, I was impressed with how they built up depth for the bullpen in a way that they really didn't do for the rotation, which is kind of ironic, especially since that's the thing they just kept talking about all year. But the bullpen was part of the pitching. Um, even if they don't get Jorge Lopez, though, I'm concerned about the bullpen, but my concern level is more like a 3-4 than like a 5-6 on the scale because, I mean, you got Roddy and Helsley, you got JoJo, and you got Kittredge. Those are your big three right there for sure. It might take a little bit of time for him to get back in the groove, and I really hope they didn't mess it up. But Liberatore against left-handed batters this year, they have a sub 400 OPS against him, so he's a weapon you can use. Ryan Fernandez has really impressed me. I feel like he's a guy that you just need to start trusting more in the seventh inning, eighth inning of games. And then maybe instead of deploying the line of every time it's a close game, we have to go to Kittredge and JoJo and Helsley,
Yeah.
Ollie's just going to have to trust one or two other guys and be like, okay, today we're going to go to John King and Ryan Fernandez and Ryan Helsley. Like he's just going to have to mix it up a little bit. So he's got more options and more games. I mean, yeah, you're right. Middleton's probably out for the year. I don't really trust Gio to be a high leverage guy at this point, but I mean, could he be like the fifth best reliever in your bullpen? Probably. And I think they could probably survive till the deadline and add another arm into that mix. I mean, Ryan Lotus really hasn't gotten any. Yeah, he hasn't had a single inning yet. So who knows? Maybe he can give you a little bit of something. But I mean, there's probably a reason why he's not being used. I know Nick Robertson just went down with elbow inflammation. So like that's kind of. I mean, do you know if you're going to get hit back? I don't know. I don't know if Riley O'Brien's going to be back. Doesn't really seem
Yeah.
like he will be
When you hear
either.
forearm and elbow, it's bad news.
Yeah, it always freaks me out a little bit. Maybe Zach Thompson gets thrown back into that mix at some point. Maybe at some point they're just like, hey, Graceffo, we're just going to use you out of the bullpen the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. So I'm not necessarily freaking out depth-wise on that. But, I mean, it just takes one or two more injuries for you to get to that point, or it just takes a fall off from Kittredge to get to that point. So I don't know. I feel like they're compared to the rest of the baseball, the Cardinals bullpen is basically the least of their concerns. I mean, you just watched the Cubs bullpen this past series. You watch the Reds bullpen from this series. I mean, teams, it feels like that's the thing everyone's chasing all the time. But yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, I just think they're, especially now that they're 500 and they're in the race, they're not like desperately clawing back and they need every single game, even though games are important, but it's not as dire anymore. I think Ollie's going to have to live or die with Kyle Leahy in the seventh sometimes, or Ryan Fernandez in the seventh. And he kind of did that in the Red Series. Helsley wasn't used to the last game. Did JoJo pitch at all in the Red Series? I think maybe
No, and I was gonna mention that as well. Like they said that they didn't pitch him because it was like scheduled. You're not pitching this series.
Okay.
If you're at a point with usage in this point in the season on May 30th, that you have to sit a reliever for an entire series, that probably means you didn't handle him right the first 7 weeks. And I'm not hating on Ollie. I like Ollie. I think he's actually done a really good job, especially the last. Every manager gets praise, obviously, when you go on a 2-week stretch like this team has. But I do think like some foresight would be great. Like you can't have JoJo not being available for an entire series because there was 1 week he threw over 100 pitches in a week. That should never happen. You can't ever do that. And now you're kind of seeing where we're at. Like Helsley, I don't think Helsley looks like worn down. Like his stuff still looks the same. Something weird's going on there. Like he's either tipping pitches or he's just. I had noticed a thing with him where if he doesn't locate a fastball on the first pitch or if he gives up a hit on it, he just abandons it completely. And I don't know why that's a thing. He needs to stop doing that because he throws 103. So just please don't do that anymore. Like the game in Chicago, the last game, Ian Happ hit a moonshot on a fastball. I don't think he threw another fastball the entire inning. It's like, dude, You throw 103, not everyone's barreling that up. Most people aren't. The
Yeah.
good news with him is he's so good that even when he's off or even when he's tipping pitches, you still have to square up a nasty slider in 103, and you're not going to be able to do that often. So I'm not too concerned about the bullpen. I do think that the thing the Cardinals never do is they're never proactive ever
Yeah.
about a problem. And right now, like Jorge Lopez doesn't have to be the answer. It could be someone else. But if you were to pick up a bullpen help, say Keenan Milton's not coming back, we were banking on him. I'm assuming they honestly used some of those guys so much because they thought, well, we're going to get Middleton back, so it'll take some stress off of
Yeah.
them later. That's not happening. You cannot trust Gio to be a guy for you anymore. He might be, he might not be. But if you're proactive, you're like, hey, we can get another guy in here and just take some more stress off it before this whole thing blows up. Like, imagine where they're at if, knock on wood, one of those three gets hurt. Then where are you at?
Yeah, for real.
You're having Kyle Leahy in the seventh inning every day, and then he's gonna get tired. Then like it can go fast. So I hope they at least keeping an eye on it. Um, let's talk about Lars Nootbaar because unfortunately he's had 2 injuries this week, which is wild. It looks like an oblique. We don't know yet. I would bet a large amount of money that it's an oblique injury. It just every oblique injury you've ever seen looks exactly like what just happened. Hopefully not a serious one. Those can take up to 6 to 8 weeks if they're serious. Hopefully it's not. Let's just go into the presumption for a second that he's gonna miss some amount of time because I think that seems the most likely to me. I hope not, but let's just say that he does. I think the Cardinals have 3 options. I want to see which one you like to fill his spot. First option is just plug Carlson in right field, go with the defense, and live with his offense. That's let's be honest, awful right now. Maybe he'll get better with more consistent playing time. I wouldn't bank on it. Second option, you put Burley in right field. DH probably Matt Carpenter. I guess they'd probably call Luke and Baker up and platoon that spot if that is what happens. And then the third option is you call up Jordan Walker and put him back in right field. I don't know where I'm even leaning here, but what would you do? Where are you leaning on those 3 options?
Yeah. I feel bad for Dylan Carlson, but I'm not rolling with that one at this point. He's got to show more to me. Even the defense since he's comes back has been a little odd to me. I think there's been some. So
very hesitant.
I mean,
I feel like
if they want to try it for like a couple games or a week and see what happens, I won't hate it. But I think I'd probably go here. I guess here's what they got to decide. Are they, which they probably need to just commit to it since they've already kind of committed to it, but are they committed to the fact that they're going to keep Jordan Walker in AAA until he figures out the power swing, until he figures out how to lift the ball more, until he figures out to do whatever their definition of success for Jordan Walker is? If that's the case, now is not the time because I mean, it's not like he's been bad in AAA, but he hasn't hit a home run yet. I don't think it's AAA.
I know it's crazy.
And like the highlights, I'm like, whenever I see Memphis post something, it's like jaywalk. I'm like, let's go, and it's like a line drive single, or it's a ground
or
ball
a double,
like,
or a double.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, like
he has hit 6 doubles over his last like 2 weeks, which is fine. Like better. Yeah. It's power of some sort. But
and so if they're okay with the fact that he just might be a really good singles doubles hitter and not hit a lot of home runs this year, then why not call him up? I mean, he's probably your best option. But with the way Matt Carpenter's been swinging the bat right now, I would probably go the scenario, put Alec Burleson in the outfield. His corner outfield defense isn't bad. Obviously, it's a decrease from Nootbaar, but I mean, you've got Siani out there. All around, your defense has been better this year. I think you can afford a guy out there that you're not super confident in, and his bat's just been great. You roll with Matt Carpenter for a little bit. I like the idea of bringing Luke and Baker up and giving him some run a little bit and see what happens. And hopefully, it's not a super long-term thing from Nootbaar. And if it is, I think you can afford to play around with Burleson in the outfield, and that might buy you enough time to see what you need from Walker, and then you call him up. I think that's the most natural, immediate thing because I don't think a Walker call up, barring like a bunch of injuries, is the thing you do in response to an injury. You sent him down there to work on things. He's not coming back up until you feel confident that he's never going back to Memphis again.
We said that last year.
Yeah, which is wild. And I mean, has my tune a little bit with Walker changed? Like slightly. I'm a little bit concerned, and maybe we were a little bit jumping the gun, but I just think he's all the talent in the world. He seems like a guy who's going to figure it out at some point. So whether it's this year or next year, he's still 22 years old. Like, calm down. It's fine. I'm not saying you're freaking out, but the people who are like, Jordan Walker is the next Dylan Carlson, and even people like when they do that list, they're like, and they throw Nolan Gorman's name in there sometimes. I'm like, how is Nolan Gorman a failure already too? Like, what is your expectation? Did you think he was Bryce Harper? Because like, I'm sorry that he's not that yet. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I think you go Burleson outfield, Matt Carpenter DH, which it's just funny that we're at a point now, especially when he got signed and everyone's freaking out, and it's like, well, Matt Carpenter actually might be a much needed bat in your lineup right now. But I think it's a fine way to go, especially how the offense is looking. But I think the bigger thing for me is, dude, Nootbaar, like I love you,
Mhm.
and I think you're awesome, and you have all the talent in the world, but these injuries are, it's like it's not Tyler O'Neill esque, but it's getting to the point where
Mm,
it's like at least for
it
O'Neill,
kind of
it kind of felt.
is.
Yeah, I feel like Newt wants to be. Well, okay, I'm not gonna say Tyler O'Neill didn't want to be in the field, but it
Wow,
felt like the.
we got hot takes over here
No,
about
I'm
Tyler
I'm
O'Neill.
more so there was a, it felt like there was a strained relationship between the Cardinals and O'Neill very
Oh
early
yeah.
on with his injury stuff. When I don't necessarily think the Cardinals have a negative view of Nootbaar because of that. It
No.
feels different. I don't know why. And that's probably just not even fair. It's not fair that it's different, but it has been. But yeah, that's the bigger thing to me is he ever going to be reliable on the field? Because the problem is that it feels like he comes back on the field, he's really slow to start, then he's kind of average, and then he heats up, and it's like this is the new part, and then okay, now
Yeah.
oblique injury, or he slid in the third round and hurt his ankle, or whatever it is, and then he's on the IL again, and you just rinse and repeat cycle, and he's just not reliable enough right now. So that's the bigger picture thing I'm more concerned about right now, but in the immediate term, however they decide to plug it, I don't think they could go wrong, except I think if they do call up Walker, it has to be because they're just going to live with the results for the rest of the year. They can't do like a, hey, come up for 15 days and go back down. Like, I don't know.
I kind of didn't even like when they sent Walker down in the first place, to be honest. I think like at some point, dude, he's got to figure out a major league level. He's not a
Yeah.
AAA player. AAA's got nothing to teach the guy at all. The pitching's different down there. Like we talk about
Yeah.
this all the time. Jackson Holiday came up and was awful at the major league level. He's back to AAA crushing it again. You know why?
Yeah.
Because it's not the same league at all. They're not even close anymore. There's been a lot of players talking about how different the leagues are right now. Because everyone that throws 95 is in major leagues. They're not in AAA. Because if they were like if they throw 98 and they're bullpen arm, they're going to the major leagues because they're going to help
Yeah.
them out more. So I don't know. Like I'd be okay if they call him back up. He does have a bobblehead next week. I really, really hope that that's not a deciding factor here. I really hope it's not. I don't know.
The
It
marketing
probably,
team comes into Mo, be like, hey man, don't forget bobblehead night next week.
yeah,
So
call him back up for his Jordan Skywalker bobblehead. I, I wouldn't be mad if they called him up. I would get it. I don't think it's necessary. I also don't like the idea of giving Matt Carpenter a ton of run because I think, like, yeah, we had great moments. That Cubs series, awesome moment. Homer yesterday, great. It, even when you watch that, his other three at bats yesterday looked like Matt Carpenter again. Like he
yeah.
didn't look good. So yeah, he can have a moment here and there. He's a professional hitter. He's going to give you good at bats. I still don't think he needs to be playing every day. Now, like
Yeah.
this is where they're at this point. Like you're in a situation that you didn't want to be in. And Burley's fine in right field. I think Siani is going to help him a lot, like cover up a lot of errors over there that Burleson can make with his lack of range. But I would be okay if they called up Walker, but it can't be for the bobblehead. That's all. That's all I'm going to say. That can't
Oh
be the deciding
man.
factor. All right,
Well,
next
also
I
back
want to
to
get into. Go ahead. Go ahead.
real quick on that, because back to our conversation about the bullpen and even like the rotation at times, like they can't cut corners everywhere. So like they got to be aggressive in
Mhm.
some points too. And like if the defense is going to take a little bit of a hit and the offense is going to take a little bit of hit and the bullpen's a little bit weak right now and the rotation's a little bit weak right now, that's a recipe for things to start falling apart when
Yeah.
all of your units aren't firing at full strength. So I can see the reason calling up your big gun and Walker right there, because maybe one of the reasons you, or one of the things that can help alleviate this bullpen is you stop playing so many close games. You start beating teams by 5 and 6 runs more often. You don't have to do every game, but like a couple times a week would be really nice so that you're not going to Helsley, Jojo, Kittredge, but can have Leahy go 2 or 3 innings and you can patchwork it a little bit. And same with this fifth rotation spot. Now that they strengthened their bullpen by putting Libby back in the bullpen, or yeah, putting Libby back in the bullpen, Andre Palante in the fifth starter spot. Hopefully, you're getting a little bit more innings out of your rotation too, and you're not straining the bullpen as much. So I think even for that point, a little bit too, like you could go your big gun here with Walker to hope it boosts your offense. I know, I mean, because he's gonna be bad bottom of the lineup too. We're not expecting him to be some middle of the order bat, but yeah, at some point, as in this conversation, I feel like I've heard myself say, well, you can kind of live with that. You can live with that. You live with that. But you can only live with so many things at so many times with a team that has this, like the Dodgers can afford a lot of things to go wrong and still be successful. This Cardinals team can't. And so at some point they can't just keep nipping every corner.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, and let's get to something that could really cover for Lars Nootbaar's injury, as well as Contreras. Goldie and Nolan, they're not back. Okay, I'm not going to say that. Goldie might be.
Yeah.
Nolan's definitely not. But they seem to be trending upwards, which is really all I
Yeah.
can be asking for right now. Goldie had two homers in the Cubs series. Obviously, Sunday night won the game for them, and then the next day provided all their offense with another homer. And Nato hit
Yep.
his homer after he came out and basically said, "I don't know what's going on. I can't figure it out." Which, by the way, hitting coaches like help him figure it out, please. They that's frustrating to me. Like if your star player saying, "I have no idea why I can't hit," you gotta be like, okay, well, who's helping him? I do you, these two need to get going. This is like we need an Arenado like stretch where it's like, oh, when he goes on those stretches, it's like a week of we just hit 5 homers in a week and batted
Yeah.
550. Like he can do that. And that's unrealistic to ask for from Nolan Gorman or from Jordan Walker if he's back up, or even Burleson, who's been great. But Arenado, you can ask that from him, okay? He's getting paid $35 million a year. He took 6 weeks off, basically, offensively. Not on purpose, obviously, but he did.
Yeah.
This feels like in Philadelphia, where he's had some success before. This series feels like a Nolan Arenado is going to come out, and he needs to be the guy that leads this offense. Because if you're losing Nootbaar, he's been really good at top of your lineup. Who knows who replaces him, whether it's Carlson or Carpenter, but we know it's not Lars Nootbaar. I feel like this is a big series for Arenado and Goldie to step up and be like, and take 2 of 3. Like, find a way to do it on the backs of your two guys that are making like a combined $60 million right now.
Yeah. And I think you've got this series Suarez, Nola, and then you don't have Wheeler, I don't believe. I think you've
Taiwan
got one of
Walker.
their back end starters, Taiwan Walker. Yeah. So yeah, you need this offense to come through a little bit too. And I mean, I would love to see a Goldschmidt Arenado week like that where they're crushing it. But even just kind of like 800 OPS type guys where it's like you're like a borderline all-star type bat, even a little bit less than that. Like I've been pushing back against most of the season that people have been like, oh, they can't hit with runners in scoring position. That's the issue. Well, I'm sorry. The first 6 weeks, they couldn't hit. That was the issue. They couldn't do anything. So like their RISP numbers were like slightly worse than their regular numbers, but the regular numbers are already so bad. Now I feel like if you can get an Arenado and Goldie going, that's when you start to get a little bit more of those clutch hits. Like they left some meat on the bone in that Red series where they could have blown some games open a little bit, but they just weren't coming through in some spots. Obviously, game 2, they put up 7 runs and they put up 5 in game 3, but both of those games they could have scored more. And in game 1, they could have done more. So I think part of the reason is those guys come up in big spots a lot. It feels like the game finds Goldschmidt, the game finds Nolan Arenado all the
Well, that's
time.
what
They're the
happens
ones who
when you
come up the
bat
bases
third and
loaded.
fourth.
Yeah, exactly. And the guys around them are starting to hit. So it's like, hey, it becomes even more obvious that you two are producing. So especially you've got Philly, you've got a couple other big series coming up here soon too. And they also, I
Houston
think
next week.
this is their first. Yeah, and then I think they play like 19 games with only 2 off days in this next stretch. It's something where they don't really have a lot of rest either. So they
Which is
really
even
need their
more worrisome to the bullpen, I think. Like,
for sure. For sure. I would say or my question to you would be like, what is your confidence level that they're going to turn it around the next, let's even say next 3 weeks, that Goldschmidt are not to look mostly like themselves. Maybe not 2022 versions of themselves, but like where we're not complaining about them all the time.
I think Goldie's been pretty good for 2 weeks now. I feel like he's just going to
Yeah.
be, I think he's going to be 2023 Goldie the rest of the year. That's what I think he is. I think he's more of a above 800 OPS guy. His year-long numbers probably won't get there unless he gets really hot, which would be great. Just because he started off so slow, which whatever, like the way I'm kind of looking at it at this point, year-long numbers for almost all these guys, I just don't care about anymore. I want them to be who they need to be from here on. We're at 500. It's a new season at this point. They're basically where they started. They found a way back. For Arenado, I just don't think it's gone. Like I can't believe that it's gone. He's 32. He is as intense as anyone. And there's an interesting thing. I don't know if you saw the Wayno interview on KMOX where he talked about Nolan and he said, "Yeah, Nolan just tinkers too much. And this is what we all know by just watching him. He is too fidgety. He cares so much that it's like an impediment to him because he worries so much when he's doing poorly. He gets in his own head. If he could just calm down, hopefully that swing against Cincinnati and get hot. I think he's going to have a hot streak. I don't know when it's going to be, but I think we're going to look at a month where it's like, oh, Nolan just hit 10 homers in a month. I think he's going to get that at some point. And I'm kind of thinking it's going to be June. I think this is going to be the month of Nolan. 2022 and 2023, he was great in June, both of those months. Both helped him get to an all-star game that no one thought he was going to get to at that point. So I believe in Nolan a lot. He's very frustrating, and I think people think I don't like him because he frustrates me to the point of taking to Twitter about my frustration. But he's one of my favorite players in baseball, and I expect a lot out of him.
Yeah.
I think he's going to get going here. I really do. For Goldie, I think he's going to be consistent. I think he's going to start getting on base more, taking his walks, singles the other way. And you're going to see when someone hangs a slider, he's going to hit a homer. Like he'll do that every once in a while. But I think Arenado needs to be the star of this team. Now, coming into the year, I thought Walker was going to take that over. Maybe that was too aggressive
Yeah.
by me. But they need a star. Like they need a guy that's like you were afraid to face. And there's some guys like Gorman has some fear factor because he can hit homers. But he can pitch. You can pitch to him if you just make your pitches. Mason Wynn's gonna hit a single. That's not too super scary. They need that guy in the middle of the order that's gonna scare you, and I think Arenado needs to become that again.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, part of the concern I have a little bit, because I would say Contreras could be that guy, and he was showing that guy, but also it's like, I mean, for a broken bone, I'm a little bit less concerned about how someone comes back from than like when they tear something or strain something. Yeah. Like it feels like a bone is healed. Like you're not re-aggravating that, and but I mean, he has been out of action for a little bit. But if you even get Contreras and then 80% what Nolan usually is in your lineup, and then you have this lineup depth they have now, because I've seen some people say like, hey, like this team is built to win with Goldschmidt and Arenado at like leading the way. They have to be two elite hitters. That's the only way this offense works. And I think that's a little bit of like a continuation of how people felt about the offense in years past. I just don't think it's true anymore. I think they've actually built out really good lineup depth where you don't need them to be too like borderline MVP guys anymore, but they can't be this bad. They need to be 80% themselves. And then you do have, I mean, especially if you have Nolan, Goldie, Contreras hitting the middle lineup, if Nootbaar's healthy, Donovan, then you've got like Alec Burleson hitting like 6th in your lineup, 7th in your lineup. You've got Jordan Walker when he comes back at the bottom, Mason Wynn at the bottom of your lineup. Like
Gorman.
This is a really, Gorman. You've got like who bats 8th in this lineup? Because whoever it is, it's someone who's producing. And that's not something this Cardinals lineup has really ever had. Last year was the first time they started to have it. It started to come together, and then everything fell apart. Yep. So I think we could see a really special offense once Goldschmidt and Arenado get going too, because that also takes the pressure off those guys too. And like Burleson doesn't have to come through every time. He doesn't have to be the guy who leads this offense. Neither does Gorman. Like honestly, you can afford Gorman to be the guy who strikes out 35% of the time and is not putting the ball in play at all, because it's like, well, the rest of the offense is producing. So Gorman could just go out there and figure it out. Walker can come up and he can figure it out on the field because the rest of this lineup is producing. I do agree with you too. I'm not ready to write off Nolan Arenado as a player like a lot of people are, because in so many ways, especially the way he's talking about things too, like he has done a lot of that tinkering to try to be use the whole field, not just be a pull hitter. He knows that at some point his strength will go away. Maybe it has started to go away. It probably has to an extent. His exit velocity numbers are way down, which I think is concerning. But part of that also is just because look at how he's swinging at the ball right now. Look at the type of at-bats he's taking. He doesn't necessarily look physically deteriorated to me. He just looks mentally deteriorated. Not like in it, like he's not mentally strong, but it's just like he literally is lost. He said it out loud. And we've seen from years past, like I think people have over exaggerated the half swings from Nolan Arenado this year. I feel like he's always done that, but he does it a lot more. But then there's always this moment every year where he just cranks a ball and you're like, oh, Arenado's back. And then he goes on a run. So maybe that was the Cincinnati game 2 days ago. He got the rest in game 3, and then he's going to go off in this Philly series. But I agree with you. At some point he's going to come back. I have no idea what the ceiling is for him anymore. I don't know if he can be an all-star like player again, or for just a really good hitter for stretches. That part, I have no idea what to say, but I think he's going to, I can't see him being this bad anymore. And I think it's going to end soon.
Yeah. And I think for him, like he doesn't have to be a 900 OPS again. Like that's not going to happen this year. Maybe it does next year. I don't know, but he needs to be a power threat. Like you can't have a guy batting 4th, which I know they moved him down to 5. I'd probably bump him back up to 4th. Ivan Herrera's been a great story this year. He doesn't look very good right now. I don't think I don't need him batting 4th. I'd rather have Arenado there, even when he's struggling, because we've seen that too. Like he is so talented, Arenado, and so good with hand-eye coordination that he still gets big hits. He still hits doubles, and they're weird ones. They don't make any sense how they're fair or whatever, but he still produces. He's not like a net negative all the time. Like he still can produce. I believe in him. We'll see what happens. All right, so we do one thing on here before we get out of here. And we predict each series. We're gonna do who we think is gonna be the best hitter of the series, and whether you think they're gonna win 2 or 3, sweep, whatever you think, lose 2 or 3, get swept, who knows. I'm gonna read my dad's first since he's gone. We haven't even mentioned that yet. My dad's not here.
He's been chilling in the background the whole time. I just haven't seen him.
He's back in Illinois. I'm down here in New Orleans. He said that he's always a pessimist. He said he's going to wait till June 1st to buy in. So we got a couple days here.
Okay.
He thinks the Cardinals are going to lose two of three, and Nolan Gorman is going to be the best hitter of the series. Bold takes there from him. You go first. I'll give my last. I don't even know what I'm going to say yet, but you go ahead.
I'm gonna say they're gonna win 2 of 3. They're gonna win 2 of 3, and I'm gonna say this is gonna be a. Let's do it. It's the Nolan Arenado series. I'm gonna buy in with you, Nolan Arenado.
You took my answers. No,
fine. Here, I'll give a different hitter. I was gonna say Brendan Donovan.
It's fine.
I was gonna say Brendan Donovan, but I was like, actually, I think Donovan's gonna come off. So I think Brendan Donovan is gonna produce, especially with Nootbaar being out. They need that OPP guy. Donovan's gonna have it.
Okay. Well, now everyone knows your actual answers are Arenado, even though you changed it. So I'm gonna go that they win 2 of 3 as well. I think if they win the NOLA start tomorrow, they're set up pretty well to sweep. If I'm being honest with you, the Phillies lineup is just ridiculous right now, even without Trey Turner. I think he's still hurt, isn't he? I think so. Who knows? But sure. They're missing Zach Wheeler. So if they can win the Michaelis versus Nola start tomorrow on Friday, and then they get Sonny Gray going on Saturday, always feel good about that. And then on Sunday, you're facing Taijuan Walker. And I think they have Lance Lynn on the mound for that game. So that could be a laser show in Philadelphia if Lance isn't on. But like it also could be for the Cardinals. Taijuan Walker's been bad. So they have a chance to sweep. I'm not going to predict that. I'm going to say they win 2 of 3. I think it's going to be really tough to win against Nola. They don't hit Nola well. They never have. And Miles Michaelis is inconsistent at best these days. And my hitter, Arenado's both of our answers, but I'll give a second answer. I think Burleson. I think Burleson's going to do well again. He's so consistent. He doesn't slump very often. Like he'll go through stretches where he's 0 for 10, but he has 8 balls hit 100 miles per hour. They were outs.
Yeah.
But he never looks overmatched at the plate. It's very rare. So I like him against Aaron Nola to homer. That's my prediction of the series.
I like it.
Yeah. So I think that's about it. There was one thing I wanted to touch on. We don't have to get too much into this, but I thought it was cool and worth mentioning. The Negro League records are now incorporated into MLB's records.
Yeah.
Josh Gibson obviously now leading in everything because he was just the best player of all time that wasn't allowed to play in Major League Baseball, obviously. I think that's pretty cool. I like that they're incorporating that history into the sport. And I don't have major takes on it. I thought it was worth mentioning, especially like if you have MLB The Show. I don't know if you do, but they have these cool storylines and they're starting to tell those stories more often, which I'm glad because there's a lot of people I think I didn't know much about that now when you look through Baseball Reference, you see things that, and you can look, hey, maybe you don't know much about Satchel Paige, go learn something. He was an amazing pitcher for a long time. So I wanted to bring that up if you have anything to add, just to say that I think that's a cool thing that they did.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea. Maybe I've just been on the loop that was even like a conversation at all and something they're looking to do. And so when it first came through, my initial reaction was like, whoa, interesting. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. And then I kind of just sat back a little bit. I was like, one, it's a great way to respect a part of history of our game that so many of us are so unaware and uneducated on that I think it's just going to become more of a national conversation than it ever was. And hopefully, like, I don't know if the casual person will know who Josh Gibson is, but maybe the casual baseball fan will finally know who a guy like Josh Gibson is. And then also, like, if like there was a little part of me that was like, well, it's kind of weird that they didn't play in Major League Baseball and these stats count. But then I was like, well, every guy who did come over was either as good or better, it felt like, than they were in.
Yeah, they were.
So it feels like the level of competition is comparable. And so, it's also not their fault they didn't get to play Major League Baseball. So like, I just think it rights a lot. I mean, it doesn't right any of those wrongs, but I think it's a really cool gesture. And it's something that's like, hey, like we want to keep the history of the game. We want to know these guys who really paved the way. And we've done a lot for Jackie Robinson. We've really started like I haven't done anything, but Major League Baseball started doing cool things like that. I mean, you see like MLB The Show and stuff like that has done stuff with that. I think it's really cool, and so I hope it, for me personally, helps broaden my knowledge of the Negro Leagues and so many of these awesome players that really should have gotten a shot but never did. And then the casual baseball fan gets to know it too, and then maybe there's some just cool storylines that come up over time with that.
The one point that I find hilarious is like, well, now you got all these people challenging Babe Ruth's records that never played Major League Baseball. It's like, dude, first off, Babe Ruth played in an era where ground rule doubles were home runs for a while. No one talks about that. Babe Ruth home run king my ass. No, he's not. He was hitting ground rule doubles. They were home runs. Second, in the same era, if he had a walk-off homer, they didn't count it with a guy on second base or first base. If that run scored first, they didn't count the home run. Like, there were so many things messed up with stats back then.
Oh, that's wild. I didn't know about that.
And oh my gosh. I'll mention half of this stuff was not even on TV or recorded, so we don't even know if it's true. No one knows. I still don't think
Yeah, that's
Will
true.
Chamberlain scored 100 points. That there's no record of it. I don't think
Oh,
it
that's your
happened.
conspiracy theory?
Dude, I don't even think it's a conspiracy theory. They had
Oh my
game
gosh.
footage
That's
of every
awesome.
game that season, but the one he scored 100. How's that a thing?
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Like, okay, he can score
Okay.
100 without the
So you
3-point line, but Steph Curry
so
can't.
you're a
Sure.
Kobe has the record.
Yes, I guess so. I guess I
That's
am.
awesome.
I think it's maybe he
Oh
scored 80.
man.
He didn't score 100. Like, how crazy is
Yeah.
it that we can believe that a guy without a 3-point line scored 100 and Steph Curry maxes out like 55?
Yeah, it
Well,
is
that makes no
wild.
sense. That's so
Yeah.
dumb. Like, he averaged
Yeah.
50 points a game that season.
How are
What was
you? I
he?
mean, no, this is a very different conversation, but how are you about like steroid guys in the record books? Because I used to be so anti, but especially, I
Mhm.
mean, maybe I'm just a Barry Bonds stan, but like with him, I feel like he
Me
needs more
too. Me
respect.
too.
So it's just like I
He's the
get
best hitter
like,
of all
and I
time, in my opinion.
yeah, and so you can put all the asterisks you want, like do whatever you need to do to like prove that he is not like he cheated the game, but he still was the best. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, and I know part of this is biases because I never want to really give Sammy Sosa credit, but I do want to give Barry Bonds and Mark
Yeah,
McGwire
but Sammy
credit.
Sosa was so different than Barry Bonds because you look at Barry Bonds' baseball reference, he
Mm,
really had one outlier year, and it was obviously the 72 or 73 home run year. But the Sammy Sosa was like
yeah,
average, 60, 60, 60, 60 home runs, and then average again. It was like he like
yeah,
beefed up his numbers like crazy. Like, obviously, for me, if you weren't suspended for steroids, I think you should be in the Hall of Fame. That's what I think. Because Bud Selig, who allowed it all to happen, is in the Hall of Fame. So I
yeah.
think Barry Bonds should be in. I think Roger Clemens should be in. I don't think Manny Ramirez and A-Rod should be in because they kind of made a mockery of the sport after everything went down to continue to
Mm,
cheat. And they both got caught multiple times. But for like the record books, like there's a lot of players that were taking stuff back in the 60s and 50s, like they were doing greenies and things like that. There's a lot of amphetamine stories out there where they
yeah,
weren't taking steroids that helped you get, a massive head, but they were doing things that helped them perform that were not legal. um
yeah.
so I just think it's a weird conversation. I think if you're going to put like Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame, all you got to do is put on his plaque, played in the steroid era, accused of steroids. Takes care of it, doesn't it? Like, that takes care of it. He
Yeah.
did what he did on the field. You can't erase it. He was a Hall of Famer before steroids, which I know is kind of a straw man argument because you can't prove when he started taking them. I get that.
Yeah.
But like, just put it on there. Put it on there that he's been accused of steroids. There's this and there's that, but he's still one of the greatest hitters we've ever seen. That's what I would do.
Yep. Totally. And then also too,
They
like, are
have,
we gonna like go through history and talk about all the guys who use sticky stuff and use illegal substances in a
or
ball and be
even
like,
worse, guys that were in the KKK that are in the Hall of Fame.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's just a lot of
What?
wild stuff like that.
Like, where we draw the line at steroids? Okay, I guess so. I'm not going to name any names, but do some research out there on some of the guys that played in the 20s. They were not awesome people.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like, it is what it is. I love Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
He was a fantastic player. I have a jersey. That's where I'm at. All right, I want to. Okay, last thing, and then we can go.
Yeah.
Do you think if you had to give a prediction right now today, where do you have the Cardinals finishing this season? You can give me standings or record, whatever you want to give me.
Yeah. I'll give standings because I don't think the records are so hard to predict right now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, I'm gonna go
You
standings.
just
I'll
don't know
say
what they're gonna do at the deadline.
yeah. I really want to say they're in the division. I'm debating that, but I think I'll say second wild card because the Brewers just have looked really good, and I think they'll probably add at the deadline too. And I mean, they won't be significant buyers,
They
but
never
I don't
add
think they're going to be
much.
a weird. Yeah, or at least they won't do lateral sells where they get rid of Hater while also trying to contend or get rid
I
of
don't know.
whoever,
They
you know.
might.
So
They might do
yeah,
that,
I guess. I
but they
mean,
don't
I'm
really
trying to
have
think
anyone
who
to
they.
do that with, though, other than
Yeah,
Willie
unless they.
Adames.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's really want to destroy their lineup with Willie Adames, but I'll say second wild card. But if you talk to me in a couple weeks, I might say division. But I just think
Yeah,
it's hard with how the Brewers look right now, and it did take so much to claw back to get to this point that it really will take another run like this to overtake the Brewers at this point. So yeah, I'll say second wild card.
yeah. 5 games, like 5 games, seems like so much, but when you think about it, it's really not. Like, 5 games is
Yeah.
you sweep a series, the Brewers get swept in your 2 games. And
Yep.
I don't know if that's gonna happen. Like I said, the Brewers don't like losing, but the last thing I want to get into, and I just slipped my memory earlier because you brought it up, and I was thinking about this. The one
Yeah.
thing before we get out of here that's kind of frustrating to me that people say, I'm not talking about you specifically, but it's when people like look at teams in May or even in like February and they say, well, this team can or can't go on a World Series run. It bothers me for a few reasons. One, let's look at the Texas Rangers last year. At this point, they had just lost Jacob deGrom last year. John Gray was their best pitcher by far. Nathan Eovaldi was about to get hurt. He hadn't yet. And they didn't have Montgomery or Max Scherzer. And Evan Carter was in Double A. And those are like some of their biggest pieces to the World Series run. You look at the Diamondbacks last year. Brandon Pfaadt wasn't even a thought to be in their rotation in the postseason, but then they had some injuries. And Paul Sewald was the closer for the Seattle Mariners. Like, there is so much that can happen from now until then that can change our outlook on the Cardinals season. Make another Montgomery trade. Like, it might even be Montgomery if the Diamondbacks still suck, but they make another Montgomery-ish trade to have a guy behind Sonny Gray, and then you have Kyle Gibson as your third starter in the postseason. Because a lot of people think that you need 3 great starters in the postseason.
No.
Like, the Rangers didn't really have a third starter last year when Scherzer got hurt. It was like Andrew Heaney and Dane Dunning were combining and piggybacking. So that kind of bothers me because I'm like, well, we learn nothing every year where these teams that aren't very good go to the World Series. It happens every year. That's the last thing I want to bring up. Because I think they can make a move at the deadline, like one Jesus Luzardo, or I mean, even not to that extent, even another Monty of 2024, whoever that is. I don't know who. Or Quintana of 2024. And you're looking at a team that can go beat anybody in a 5-game series.
Yeah, I feel like it's what the conversation should be is it's like the margin for error for the Cardinals to go on a World Series run is razor thin compared to where the Dodgers are, where it's like the Braves have lost their best player, their best position player, and their best pitcher, and they still have a better chance of winning the World Series than you right now. If the Cardinals lost Sonny Gray and they lost, I mean, I don't know who to say their best position player.
Don't say it.
So like,
we can't afford to lose anyone.
Yeah, but like if they lost their 2 best players, it's like, okay, they cannot win the World Series without Sonny Gray. So I think that's part of where you kind of like, to your point, like if the Cardinals can go add a second frontline starter, they have a healthy lineup going to the postseason, their bullpen is playing like it is right now, and they got those 2 top starters, they can compete with most teams, and you're probably going to pick the Dodgers against them, but they could beat them. And then we also don't know what's going to happen with the Dodgers rotation or the Braves. Like last year, the Dodgers had Bobby Miller, Lance Lynn, and I can't remember who pitched the 3rd game of their series against Diamondbacks. Like all the injuries happen. So there's a lot of time left in the season. Oh yeah, it was Kershaw. It's just like playoff Kershaw. What is happening?
They almost ended his career. He like get 1 out. It was horrible.
Yeah, I think it blocked out my memory because I used to be anti Kershaw just because we always went against him in the playoffs, and now I'm like, I feel bad for him. I want him to do well.
He's so awesome too. Like, he's so good still. It's crazy. And he'll be back for the Dodgers later, which is fun.
I can't say who it was because I can't really confirm if it was real because they heard from a teammate of, they said they heard from a teammate of Clayton Kershaw, but apparently there was an off season not that long ago where he was open to coming to St. Louis, but St. Louis didn't call. And I was like,
add him to the list. Hey, Kershaw and Max Scherzer. That's a fun group to not call back.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to say on here because I don't want people to go around.
That'd be like being like the quiet kid in high school and not calling back the cheerleader that tries to go out with you. Like Max Scherzer and Clayton Kershaw. Are you kidding me? Like, what are we doing? You don't even have to look that hard at them to see that they're good. Like, that's wild. I get they want a lot of money, but come on, guys. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like, I know DeWitt's been very big about, or he said multiple times he regrets the Scherzer thing. And with how dire the Cardinals have needed pitching last few years, I don't know. That's why that story doesn't fully add up to me where I'm like, okay,
no, it adds up.
You wanted to come.
It's pretty on brand.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is, but maybe it's
Bryce Harper had a video with Nelly. Had a video with Nelly telling him to come to St. Louis, and they didn't even try. They're like, we have Dexter Fowler. They made a highlight montage of Dexter Fowler and Stephen Piscotty on Bally Sports in the offseason.
Imagine if it come out that the Kershaw wanted to go and they're like, yeah, we have Johan Oviedo, we have Jake Woodford, we're okay.
Yeah, we're fine. We have Dakota Hudson, did you see his COVID year where he pitched 10 games and was good? Oh gosh. All right. I am really excited. We'll get out of here in a second. The thing that I'm so geeked about is I'm so excited to see Wilson Contreras on the Cardinals in a playoff run. Like maybe not in the playoffs, but on a run down the stretch to get in the postseason. Can you the energy that dude brings when this team absolutely sucks? Can you imagine
for sure
him in Busch Stadium hitting a big homer in like September when they're in a playoff race? Dude, I need that in my life. I need Arenado and Wilson Contreras' intensity in a playoff run in my life. So hopefully that happens. All right.
And
Well,
Sonny
I want to
Gray on the
thank.
mound. Like he's a guy that just like
Yeah,
he just
dude.
like whenever he gets a big out, he's like jumping around.
And
Like
Lance
they've got a
Lynn,
lot of like yeah, and Lance Lynn, Jojo Romero does that kind of
Nootbaar,
stuff
dude.
too.
They're
So there's a
His
lot of
team has
fun
so much
guys.
potential
Mason
to be
Wynn,
so much fun. That's why
yeah,
when people like call them boring, they're not boring. They're boring when
they're
they suck.
not.
Every team's boring when they suck. But they're
Yep.
I mean, no one thought the Athletics were fun last year. I wonder why. Um, all right. All right, let's get out of here. I appreciate you coming on.
Of course.
Obviously go read all of his stuff. Go watch Deal on the Cards. I'm sure you already do. Every link you need is going to be in the description of this YouTube video. If you're listening on Spotify, go to the YouTube video because there's where I can put the links. So um, thanks, Josh. Anything else you want to say before you get out of here or plug or
No, thanks
anything?
for having me on. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy you guys' podcast a lot. You and Mike do a great job, and so we need to get you back on dealing the cards sometime soon. But this has been fun. Go Cardinals! Big month of June ahead. Let's go.
Nolan Arenado MVP season's back on as of tomorrow when he homers twice off Arenado. All right, we're getting out of here. All right, go Cards.